Hello, good morning, good evening, and good afternoon, everyone joining us from various regions. And welcome to this session on API test automation capabilities on advanced sections. And we have Kamaljeet Singh Bagga with us, who is a partner enablement manager in the partner enablement department, and he'll be driving the session. So let us get started. Kamal, can you move to the second slide, please? Thank you. So welcome everyone to this session on API advanced capabilities as part of our monthly webinar series of Virtuoso Mastery series. And in this webinar, we'll explore the advanced capabilities of API test automation in Virtuoso. And before we speak more about the agenda, so just some rules. There are various sections in Zoom that you can see. First one being the chat section where you can chat or speak to the other participants of the webinar. Then second is the chat section where in case you have any queries, please drop your questions in the chat section so our experts can answer those queries and you can receive the responses to your questions. Third, in as we had in the previous webinars, we have uh, a quiz at the end of the session of this webinar. So we request all the participants to stay tuned till the end of the webinar and stand a chance to win an Amazon gift card worth £20. So there would be 5 winners who would be announced soon after the webinar concludes, and you need to participate in the quiz to be eligible to win this gift card. Moving on to the next slide. So the agenda for the day would be we'll have a quick recap on what we have covered so far as part of the Virtuoso monthly PXP enablement webinar. Then we'll speak in detail about API responses as part of the Virtuoso Advanced API Capabilities webinar session today. Then we'll speak about API authorization, various types of authorization methods available in Virtuoso. Then we'll see how sequential API works in Virtuoso, executing multiple APIs one after the other in Virtuoso. Then we'll see how you can data drive the API test using the data section as well as the API manager and the authoring section of Virtuoso. And followed by it, we'll be exploring various Virtuoso APIs, leveraging which you can perform various tasks such as generating reports and executing various goals and journeys through APIs. That would be followed by Q&A and then the quiz that we have for the challenge. So without a further ado, let's get started with the quick recap. So for the people who have just joined us or are joining these webinars for the first time, let me quickly introduce Virtuoso to them. So Virtuoso is a no-code/low code test automation solution that allows any and everyone to start the test automation by leveraging something called as natural language processing, which is NLP, and it allows the users to write tests by simply using plain English language keywords, which is, for example, if you want to click on a button rather than writing a piece of code, you'll simply write click on the button name in Virtuoso. That will create an automated test step for you, which will, upon execution, click on a button. Virtuoso has self-healing, which reduces the maintenance or the test maintenance efforts to to a great extent. It reduces the maintenance effort by 85% as per our uh, as per our observations from various customers. Virtuoso has a lot of AI capabilities, leveraging which you can generate the summaries of a particular test journey. You can build on top of the out of the box capabilities of Virtuoso by leveraging something called as AI extension creator. Then you also have the AI data generator that allows you to generate test data by using the natural language prompts in the data section. Virtuoso promotes end-to-end testing where you can combine the functional UI test as well as the API test and uh, execute these tests from an end-to-end perspective. Then it also supports cross-browser tests. You can build the test on a particular platform, for example, a Windows machine or a web application, and it also the same test can be executed across multiple devices and multiple browser types. It allows you to shift left by leveraging the requirement section of Virtuoso, by using which you can import the Gherkin syntaxes and start building your test as early as your development begins. So moving on to the next slide, I would like to hand it over to Kamal, who would be our speaker for the day, and he'll do a quick recap on the API concepts that we had covered in the previous webinar, and followed by that, we'll deep dive into the advanced capabilities. Thank you all for joining us. Stay tuned till the end for the quiz and for getting the questions answered. Thank you.
Hi everyone. So first of all, thanks Abhijit for like the introduction. And hi everyone, I am Kamaljeet. I am from the Partner Enablement team. So I'll be here with you to like help you out understand the concepts of the advanced API that we are offering in Virtuoso. So before that, let's do a quick recap on what we learned in the last webinar. So last webinar was just about the basics of API. So let's just try and understand what an API is. So an API is a medium between two systems, which is usually to communicate between one another. And as you can see in the images below, so suppose you were an end user and you would need some information. So you would generally request that information from a system, and that system will in return give you a response or not, depending on like what kind of information that you asked for, or what were the things that like were you have did you have proper authentication to that, did the server read your message properly or not. So the not part we'll discuss in a later bit, but moving on to the next slide, let's recap the benefits of API testing. So as you guys already know, API testing is generally done when the UI of some system under test is not really built. So that helps us to be working in a better agile framework and a more shift left kind of a framework, and which also helps us detect early issues, helps us do the faster test execution, and also APIs are generally really low maintenance and more scalable. So let's recap the HTTP methods in REST that we had discussed. So there are like 7 methods in REST, but usually these 4 are the most commonly used methods. So get is generally to retrieve the data from the server. Post is to actually post the data into the server, while put is to actually edit the data you already posted into the server, and delete is to delete the entry of whatever you were like posting already on the server. And like this is the kind of main communications that we do via REST. And there are some key concepts here, as you can already see. So like I'll just like list them out for you since this is already a recap. So basically in the image that you see below, HTTPS, this is kind of a main endpoint that you send in the API. So this contains your data. So we should know what is what. So HTTPS would be your protocol, which could be either HTTP or HTTPS depending on the security that you are having. Generally, the one that follows HTTPS is the domain name, which is the actual system name or system IP or an address that you can say where your information is being fetched from. The next one in yellow is really just a resource, which is like the exact location or the subsection of where from where the information that you need to fetch from. And the one in purple is basically the query parameters or the conditions that you need to provide, or the things that you would ask from the resource to give you. So the certain set of conditions or queries that you would want in return from the server. So this is kind of the key concepts. So let me just move to like today's thing. So I'll start by discussing API responses. So what are API responses? API responses actually are kind of the data or the information which are returned from an API after a request has been made. So typically these are in the formats of JSON or an XML. So talking about API status codes, there are majorly two kind of status codes. One is the positive success codes, and the second is the negative failure codes. So positive success codes are generally denoted by 1, 2, and 3 series, where you might have already like seen this a lot, where 200 OK is generally known to be a success response, and 201 created is deemed to be generally a new resource that was created. So we generally get that in return. So looking at the negative failure codes here, so generally these are denoted by the 4 and 5 series. So in the 4 series, in the 400 bad requests, suppose you saw that code. So it is generally due to the fact that whatever API body or whatever parameters that you are trying to pass are having an invalid syntax or they are having an error. So that is when you generally receive a 400 bad request. 401 unauthorized is a error message when you would receive when you were trying to access a resource which was basically hidden under authentication and you don't have a proper authentication or authorization to see that resource. 403 forbidden is like the server understood that you are trying to access it, but that particular instance was maybe hidden from you, or it is kind of forbidding you to access that particular resource. And 404 not found means the server kind of cannot find the requested resource. So whatever resource you are trying to request, the server doesn't have that resource to begin with. Coming to the 5 series, so these are generally the server errors. So this kind of generally means like 500 internal server error. It occurs to us when kind of the server is shut down. So we aren't able to access the servers anymore, and that kind of also relates to the fact that the server is not accepting any of the requests to begin with. And same goes for 503. It is kind of same but a little bit different in the sense like generally this 503 code is given out when the server is kind of overloaded, or like there are too many people clocking into that particular server to try and access information, or maybe if it is temporarily unavailable, then generally this happens. Let me move to the API authorizations and speak to you about this bit. So as you already know, the data which is available online is not really available in a very public domain, but kind of available in a private domains for of course for obvious privacy reasons. So to access these data, generally we need to have proper authentications or authorizations in place to first check if we have a valid entity, and if we are a valid entity, if we have access to it, and then if we have access to it, then to display the data. So like these are the four major types of uh, authorizations that we support at Virtuoso: a basic, bearer token, a custom token, and OAuth. So basic token is nothing but the base64 encoded username and password which we generally inject in the header. So it goes in the format like authorization basic and then base64 encoded characters. Bearer token is usually like a token or a JWT token which is directly sent into the header. A JWT token is nothing but a JSON web token, and custom token is basically any other kind of tokens that you have maybe in any other format or any other configuration which you can directly which your API supports. You can directly put them in the headers and you can make it work. And of course OAuth is like the more standard and secure protocol that is being used these days. So this is kind of a token based authentication where you would need to have a authorization code generated, or maybe an implicit value or a PKC factor. So generally, like you get a bearer token out of it, which is like authorization code, and authenticate in your other subsequent API steps. So let me quickly jump to sequential APIs. So sequential APIs are the APIs that are supposed to perform different actions, but they only work together when run in a sequence. So they kind of perform different actions, but they are supposed to run in a sequence. So an example of this use case that I could give you is, maybe you can imagine if you have an online shopping application, a web shop, where you would need to place an order. So initially you would need to go there and verify if the user is authenticated or not. And also the second step would be to check if the product is available or not. The third step would be to process the payment. And the fourth step would be to generate an order ID and confirm the order. So these steps go hand in hand. This is like the whole use case that we have. But technically we would need different APIs for that. For example, in step one, we would need to have authentication APIs or OAuth layers or whatever kind of APIs that we need to have in place for that. In step two, generally we would use a plain old simple API which uses the get function to get the kind of products that we are looking for. The third API would also be a kind of secure API, and it would kind of be an interlinked API with your bank as well. So as you can already see, all of these APIs do small micro things in the way, and in the end it completes the whole cycle like that. So this is all about sequential APIs. And let me move to the data driven API testing. So, data-driven API testing basically involves running the API tests with various input data, which are set to validate the API's functionality. And this API functionality is validated across multiple scenarios using the same test logic but different sets of data. And why do we do it? Is because of the factors that I am mentioning right now in the screen. So it's because it's very good to have like a huge amount of coverage is there by handling different sets of data. Scalability is a big factor. It's very easy to do automation by having data driven testing already implemented in your CI/CD pipelines, where you just create the system under test, whatever like things you need to build on, and then you push your data, and then you can do the testing right there and then. And it also helps in the separation of data and logic, because like not every component will be located in the same area, so kind of it helps in that manner. And let me quickly jump to the Virtuoso APIs. So Virtuoso APIs are nothing but Virtuoso's internal APIs that are used to integrate Virtuoso as a tool to external solutions. So these are usually used to integrate between CI/CD applications, and also can be used to perform your own actions on Virtuoso through APIs. So Virtuoso APIs generally require like just one token, which is located in your user page, and this token is to be used as a header, like having said authorization bearer and then your token. And then we can use Virtuoso's APIs to retrieve projects and data, launching executions, setting up authorizations, user management, requirement gathering, test data and creation, and of course so much more that I couldn't write here. But yeah, Virtuoso APIs are like used in a lot of different ways. So now this is kind of all I had for the slide deck, and let me move to the Virtuoso app, where I can show you like what we have for a demo. So, like having discussed the sequential API scenario, like just to discuss the functionalities of Virtuoso and explore it in a bit of more detail, I have this request.in host, which where I'll like quickly look around into the some of the API calls and discuss them with you. So the calls that I'm gonna look at are the list users, which lists all the users at available at this particular resource under the page two. I'll also check the create user, where we'll create a new user, update user to update the data for that user, delete user to delete the whole instance or whatever the entry of the user. And the first and the foremost thing that we are going to look at is the registration thing, where we'll check if the registration is successful or unsuccessful. So let me quickly click here to just give you a brief of whatever I spoke to you about. So as you can already see here, this particular thing is the endpoint right here. And this particular thing is the resource, which you can see right here where my mouse is. And then this is the data where we need to send in the body to actually expect something like this response and a 200 OK message. So I have used the same kind of things, and I have built a similar thing under the API manager in Virtuoso. So you can see right here the register, it looks exactly the same. Let me just try and send this request once to basically show you that it works the way we are expecting it. But this is just for this one set of data, right? Like how would we actually make it in a very generic set of data so that we can basically pass any number of data here? To do that, Virtuoso has a feature called input mapping right here. And for response fetching, we have a feature called output mapping. So let's quickly discuss these things right here. So let me go to the input mapping, and let me just kind of do it right now. So if I enter email here, and just for now, just for this bit, let me quickly just copy this and paste it right here, so that I can just show you how I implement that. And same goes for password. So let me just put password and pistol here. So okay, I got to type. Okay, sorry, some glitches at my keyboard. It seems. Give me a second, please. Okay, yeah. Listed. So, so how do you implement these keys into your requests? Is by actually just using the three curly braces on both of the side of your this, and entering your variable or key that you had in the same case, by the way. uh, here, and same goes for the password field. So I'll just let me just quickly do that. So this kind of makes it not locked to one particular value, but we can also like change the values here. Now you might say like you are still logged into the one value, but this is just a sample value that we have. When we are going to move this test to the Virtuoso app, to our journeys, you will be able to like understand like what is what right here. And same thing I will do for output mapping. So output mapping is generally what I want to do is I want to have these values so that I can read these values later on in my subsequent tests. So what I'm going to do is I will just basically set a key called response. And for the value for this, I will type in a dollar and type in response. So what this dollar and response will do is it will try and copy all these values and save it into the key of response, which we can call later. Okay, so this is set for this one. Let me just save it first, and I'm quickly gonna jump into one of the journeys that I created for this, which is a demo journey. And let me add a checkpoint and write register user as the name for that. And let me show you how do we call API test cases in Virtuoso, which you might have seen in the already existing session, but it's always good thing to have a fresher. So we just type in API call, which is our NLP, to like really easy directly we can implement. And then we can type in our like the folder name that we had. So you can see as I typed in API, I had created two like API calls into my API session folder. So both of them are showing up. So I'll click on API session register. Okay, and give me a second. I need to do it again. I forgot to write one thing. API call, API call, API session get users, and then I'm gonna put two brackets to actually uh, have this set up. And wait, I clicked on save. Let me quickly refresh this. Okay, yeah, give me a quick second here. Oh my God. Oh my bad. So I just entered get users, which is not the one that we are supposed to use. So I'll just call the second one. Apologies for that. Yeah, I'll use the get users again because we need to show the second one also. So I'll just click on register and then I'll create these two brackets. And as you can see, it get the data which we have to enter gets auto populated. And here is where now we can basically play around with our data. So we can add a constant value here, or we can set it to a variable, and this particular variable we can call from our test data, and we can use it, which I'm going to show you in a bit. But if I can just quickly for now just keep these two values as default, and then in the result section I'll just type in response to call in the response value that I had saved in my API manager. If you can see this, the in the output mapping. So I can just do that, and I'll have to do now is just run the step. So I'll quickly run the step. Maybe I'll delete this now and let me run it from the beginning. So as you can see, the API has passed, and when we click here under the side effects section, we'll be able to see what are all the responses that we got. So as you can see right here, we got a response returned, and this response has like all the things that we were expecting. So it would generally have the status message. So if you have to perform status checks for your API responses, what you have to do is in the output mapping, all you got to do is you got to type another status. Basically, just name a key and then type in response dot status. So this is actually on a parent to child parenthesis. So if you can see here from this list, if you can see right here under side effects. So basically response dot status. So if we had to suppose basically pick in the data or pick in the token, so what we would have to write is basically response dot data dot token, and I'll show you that. But let me first quickly hit save so that I can have my status getting reflected right here. And then I'm gonna do a quick refresh, and I'll come here and basically when I try to add another result variable now with the name of status, I'll have an option to add status. Okay, and then when I run this again, I'll be able to see my status value will be getting saved explicitly outside the not in a JSON manner, but the value will be getting saved explicitly. So we can validate. Now I can write basically another assertion, say assert status is 200. Okay, actually let me just try to type the whole thing. Okay, facing issues with my keyboard. I'm sorry for this. Response dot status is 200. Okay, yeah, I'll show you that in a bit. But basically, this is how we actually pick up the status. Now, suppose you wanted to have the token also saved here, and suppose you wanted to fetch the token right there in your subsequent request. So in the output mapping section, I'll just create another token parameter. And this time here, I will define this token as response dot I'll quickly jump back here to check that response dot data, which is the structure dot token. So response dot data dot token. And if I can come back, if I can save here and then refresh this page once, and all I have to do is go to the step editor, come down and add a result variable and type in token and simply select the token value and just run this step once again from the beginning. So under the side effects, you see a token is getting captured. So we can use this token subsequently in any of the next steps. Quickly going back to the get users, because this is actually a little bit of more complex scenario to understand this functionality. That is why I decided to keep this. Is because you can see here there will be a lot of different repetitive IDs which are there. So these are like multiple responses that we are getting. So what we have to try and understand is, suppose we wanted to pick up the email of the second ID. So how do we need to do that like that? So basically in here, all we need to do is in the output mapping, firstly, let's type in response so that we have our normal response getting generated in the first instance. In the second instance, actually, like since we have the response already, let me quickly run it first and show you so that you are with me. So I'll just type in the normal LLP to create to basically create this API session get users, and then I'll use my brackets. And under the add user variable, I shall be able to type in response and see all outputs. And wait, yeah, I should have saved it. My bad. And let me refresh. So yeah, as you can see right here, this is already like basically returning as response, and then I can select my response here. So returning as response. Okay, and maybe I can change the name to response one. Okay, and let me, if I run it from beginning now, so there are two subsequent API calls which are getting run. So if I look at the side effects of the second one, you will be able to see that this particular response one has captured all our data. Suppose for an example, suppose I wanted to pick up the email for the second instance of the like the second index. Okay, so how I'm gonna frame my like the next statement is basically response dot data dot data with index and then dot email. So let me just quickly show you that. So if I can come here and type in email one, and for value, I will just simply type response dot data, and I'll write one because we need the data from the second instance. And then I'll type email right here. And maybe same thing I can do for uh, another email. And then same thing I can do for one or two of the names so that I can just help you visualize what I am trying to do here. Uh, First name one. So all I'm doing is I am just following the structure which is here and kind of trying to uh, get this particular value. So first name, and then first name, name two will be okay. So once I have done that, let me quickly save, and then I can go back and do a refresh. So as we do that, under the step editor, we shall be able to add new variables. So let me just add email one, and I can simply select email one, which we already created over there. Same thing I'll do for email two, and I'll repeat this again for first name, and then the last time. Okay. And as soon as we run, we should be able to see our side effects. So as you can see right here, if I can show you the calls. So this is the zeroth entry, which means this is the first one. What our idea was to pick up the second input here. So our first name one is basically Lindsay, and the email is lindsayferguson@regress.in. And basically, it's gonna pick up the next one. So you can see Tobias and Tobias Funk @regress.in. It's getting saved. So this is kind of it. Let me quickly show you some of the examples that handle some more scenarios here. So for example, if you can see for the AP, like for this particular register API, what I have done is I've created such a scenario wherein I have created two assertions. So this is what I was talking to you about maybe in the previous step. So basically to assert if that particular status code of this request equals 400, or to assert if it equals to 200. So I have added two here, and here inside your assertions, you can also assert them uh, to set a condition for them to run only if that particular status code equals to 400, and for this to run only if that particular status code equals 200. So in that scenario, suppose your API had some like bad request or some invalid data. In that case, this is the particular like assertion that would actually get executed, and in the other case, like in the normal generic case, this is the one that would get executed. uh, Going to a couple of more examples that I have here. So this is the verify user in DB API, which I was just showing you. So this particular API will just kind of see if your first name, last name, all of those are exactly the same as you have mentioned in for that particular ID. So here we would need to yeah. So here basically the assertions just try and understand that either you can assert by directly like calling your API text in accordance to the formula that I told you, or you can directly save it in the same way as I have just showed you how to save it from the output mapping. So both things are like possible. So this is just a two approaches that I'm showing you to tackle the same situation. So here I have already saved the first name one, which is this, to a buffer to a variable called first name. And then basically I have used the same one to equate it to the value of George, if it is correct or not. And then same thing I have basically done here. So you can see these two texts are same and it's equating to George. So you can use both approaches. So This checkpoint 5 and checkpoint 6 kind of demonstrate a sequential API kind of a structure wherein we are searching for a user ID for one particular ID, which is ID 4. Okay, and then we are kind of returning, checking if the we got a correct response, and we are checking the name of that particular user which is there. And then the next checkpoint is we are editing the same data. Okay, so basically you can see right here I have basically called the API to find the value, and finally to evaluate if the name was set as Eve only for the fourth ID. Okay, in the next step, what I'm doing is I'm calling out extensions, which you might have learned in your previous sessions. So I'm calling out the generate random extension to generate a random name, which you can see right here, Margareta. And I have called the same extension to generate a random job title, which you can see customer paradigm coordinator. And I have used the put call, put these values and edit that. And if you can see right here, this put call was done. So I got a 201 success message. So if I could have asserted it right then and there to just check if my random name or a random job is the same value Margeta, I could have also done that, but what I wanted to show you was a different approach. So assertions can also be performed by the use of JS expressions. So this is kind of a use case where you want to evaluate two variables into one. So to evaluate two variables, all you got to do is you need to just write those into this format, and it's a very easy format. It's just the extension, it's just the name of yours which was there. You would normally be in the use variable button, but you need to go to use JS expression. You need to write the exact path of your path which is coming from your API call, and then the uh, variable that I stored right here and equating it to true. So if you can see right here, the expression was successfully evaluated, and same it was evaluated for the job. Now coming to the delete user, again it's doing the same thing. It's just deleting the data. We are kind of storing the value from a JS path, basically storing the content length into the content length and checking if the content length equals 0, it was evaluated to be 0 by this green button right here. Now, the last thing is actually something that is failed, but this is something which is usually mostly applicable in a data-driven testing framework, which I'm going to show you the next, like right after this. So in this one, I have called for all of the requests again, all of the set of data on that particular page, and you can see I have just extracted all the emails out of them. So right here you can see, and I have just copied all the emails, and then what I'm gonna do is the email there would be one email tag which I would get in the start, which I would get as a variable. So basically, this particular is for handling multiple assertions, where you can basically create relationships between your assertions to pass as true only if one particular like condition passes, or to pass as true only if all the conditions passes, which means like for one it is or, which is denoted by these two pipes, and for the and conditions it's noted by ampersand. But what we needed to do here was just to verify if one of these passes. Okay, so here uh, I have set an assertion to be like assert if amongst all of these emails my email is there or not. So just to show you this bit, I will quickly jump into the data-driven testing, because that it's better implemented in there. So my next journey is related to data-driven E2E flow, which you can also denote that that there is a database linked, a test data sheet linked here by looking at this icon right here. And also, if I can quickly open my test data and show you, this is the API data that I created using our own like AI. So I just asked the AI to create me 5 variances of data having email, password, first name, last name, and job. And then I have saved it. And it is already assigned to 2 of my goals and 3 of my journeys. So this is the journey that we are currently looking at. And all I'm gonna do is I am just gonna run this journey just to show you like how the different sets of data are actually passed. And to actually see it working, I'm gonna jump to the project activity. Okay, let me just quickly go back a bit and try and run this particular as execute advanced and select my test data as well, so that I have my test data selected. And you can see this is the same database that we were calling out from. And I have clicked on execute, and I think now it has started. So let me go to the project activity, and you can see right here my journeys have just started. So it's taking a couple of minutes to initialize. After the initialization phase is done, it will actually run, and then I will show you what is what. And like this is essentially the same thing. And so I'll just quickly meanwhile just show you that this particular exact journey has been run 5 times. And you can see there would be 5 different sets of data. So if I can see this email tag that I was mentioning, so if I quickly go to side effects, so for this particular one the email is Janet. For the second instance the email is Emma. uh, for the fourth instance, it's Charles, and fifth, it's Tracy, and so on. So it's basically running it in all of different sets of data. And as I was telling you about this assertion will try and see if uh, only it will just try and see if like all if our value if our email presents within all of these in any of these, and if it exists in any of these, then it will evaluate as true, and it will like basically end like pass our test case. So let me go to the project activity and show you. This is the one that I just ran. So the same thing has happened here, just to like show you that bit again. So see here, this is Janet, and so on and so forth. Yeah. So this kind of brings me to the data driven API. This one. Let me quickly jump back to my like my mastery goal, and let me show you the next one, which is Virtuoso API. So as I mentioned already, Virtuoso API is all about like it is a internal like it's the APIs that are owned and like made by Virtuoso to actually help you get your data and to run CI/CD and all that. So there are loads of APIs in our documentation, and you can obviously check that in our documentation. There are tons of APIs that you can actually implement and use them, related to user management and tokenization and executions and all that stuff. But I have just covered like 9 basic APIs here to you, just to show you how it is. So the first one here is to fetch the bearer token, which is just basically calling in for the Virtuoso server, passing in my email and password, and fetching my like token, fetching the expiry date of the token and the status. Uh, Let me try and run this. And the second one is to just get the projects from an organization ID. The third one is to get goals from the project ID, where I am just trying to take the project ID and get a response as goals, like in as a goal ID. And basically, if I need more information of that particular goal, I'll just try and call get goals from goal ID, wherein I would just enter the same goal ID, and it would give me like what is what about that. And this is regarding create goal. So this is to actually create a new goal inside the same project. So as you can see right here, under the response, we have like basically created a whole new goal right here. Using we have created this new ID actually, and then I can also show you this. This goal's name is digital marketing shop. So if I can quickly jump back to my project activity, and sorry my this, and I'll go to the uh, my goal. My bad. Let me go to my project dashboard. And yeah, if you can see right here, I think there should be a digital marketing shop created, as you can see right here. What I'm gonna show you next is basically that I'm updating the goal, and I can update any like of the data that we have to be inside that goal. So let me just go to the step editor, and all I'm gonna do is let me just put in this goal ID right here, and let me just try to run it from here. Okay, I think it ran from the start, but that should be okay. Okay, let me try to run once again. Okay, yeah, seems like there has been some issue with this, but okay, yeah, let me try and update this name to Kamaljeet, uh, uh, Kamaljeet's demo web shop, and then maybe try and run this. Yeah, so as you can see, the update has been done, and if I can quickly jump back here and then refresh this, so you will be able to see that particular goal of mine would have been renamed to Kamaljeet Shop, as you can see right here. And then basically the next one is to basically delete the same goal, which we can also do if we just use the same goal ID. Now there are some other features as well, like fetching the checkpoints of one particular goal, where this would actually give you a list of all the checkpoints that you see right here. If you can see here, all the checkpoints and what is to be done, all are mentioned there. And then this is for getting the job execution status, to actually fetch the execution status, like whether it passed, whether it failed, what is the outcome and all that. And this Virtuoso API is to basically rerun the failed execution. So whenever we trigger this, generally in the project activity, there would be a fresh. So as you can see, this is the one that we ran 5 minutes ago, right? So this was triggered because I tried to rerun a failed execution. So I basically created an execution which I set to be deemed to failed always, just to demonstrate this. So basically, as and when that API call is done, this execution which was failed would be triggered again. So yeah, that's kind of it. And that brings me to the end of my demo. So thanks a lot, guys, for wearing me out. And I'll pass the mic to Abhijit for the closing notes.
Thanks a lot, Kamal, for the wonderful session on API test automation advanced capabilities. So with that, let us jump on to the Q&A part, and let us see if we have any questions remaining which have not been answered so far by our other experts. So let us take the questions. And soon after the Q&A part, we'll launch the quiz, and all the participants will be eligible to win Amazon gift cards by participating in the quiz. Let me see, Kamal, do you see any questions? I guess all of our questions have already been answered. Anyone, do you guys have any other questions? Feel free to drop them in the chat. But our team has already answered all the questions that we had received so far. So with that, let us launch the quiz. And all of you would have 5 minutes to complete the quiz and stand a chance to win Amazon gift card worth £20. We'll reward top 5 participants. So please participate accordingly. So the quiz would be launched in 3 seconds. And I hope the participants are able to see the quiz now. It will be live for 5 minutes, and the top 5 participants would be awarded. 3 more minutes to go. We are seeing some responses coming in. Two more minutes left. People who have already completed the quiz, we'll be announcing the winners on LinkedIn, and we'll also reach out to you via email. Top 5 participants would be picked based on the performance, and they would be rewarded with Amazon gift card worth £20 in their respective currencies. We'll wait for 1 more minute before we close the quiz. Final 10 seconds. All right. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for participating. And with that, it brings to the announcement of the next or the upcoming webinar. So, since Virtuoso Mastery Enablement webinar series is a monthly enablement webinar, so we'll be hosting another webinar on Virtuoso test automation hacks. This session would be conducted by Asha Siddharaju, who is also a partner enablement manager in the partner enablement team. So in this session, we'll cover the generic use cases of test automation using Virtuoso, how string operations can be performed in Virtuoso, how does the mouse operations or how can you automate mouse operations in Virtuoso, the keyboard how to automate our the keyboard operations or keyboard key presses using Virtuoso, how to use regular expressions in Virtuoso, and also table data verifications in Virtuoso as part of this session. The session would be conducted on 26th of September at the same time as today, which is 5 p.m. to 6 p.m. IST, which is 12:30 p.m. to 1:30 p.m. BST. And in this webinar as well, we'll host a quiz relevant to the topics covered in the session, and top 5 participants would be rewarded again with Amazon gift cards worth £20. So I thank everyone for joining the session. Post the session, all of you will receive a feedback form using which you can provide your feedback so we can enhance or take your suggestions and implement the same in the subsequent sessions. And now you can see the remaining webinars planned for the year. Since we have this calendar since the beginning of the webinar series, followed by the test automation hacks, we'll also have a session on Virtuoso test automation best practices in October, then a session on how to build extensions from scratch in Virtuoso on 28th of November, and the final session for the year on integrating Virtuoso with third-party applications on 19th of December. So all the registrations for these webinars would be opened 1 month prior to the scheduled date of the webinar. So stay tuned on the LinkedIn channel of Virtuoso in order to get regular updates on the webinar as well as the other initiatives that we run. With that, I would like to thank everyone for joining us today. And I hope you got to learn something new today. And please share your feedback in the chat section or in the feedback form that you'll receive. Thank you. Good day ahead.